Good afternoon, guys. Welcome to this webinar on EasyScan. My name is George Lennis. So today's webinar is on EasyScan Diagnostics. This will be a level 2 webinar, how to use EasyScan with the different heater types. What we are going to do in this webinar is I'm going to walk you through the process itself. I'm connected to Airtronic 3rd generation bunk heater. So we have the shortcut on the desktop. So you can say it says EasyScan 1.0.60. That, by the way, is the very latest version. As you know, this software is always updated periodically. So I would definitely recommend, if you did install it, let's say more than a year ago, to go back into the portal, download the latest version, and install the latest version. So we double click on the shortcut and the application will open up. And this is the main interface screen. You're all familiar with this if you have used EasyScan before. So we have the main menu. Within the main menu, we have some important buttons. So of course, we have the select button. We'll come back to that. We have the diagnostics button. We have then the report button. So these are the three main buttons that you will be often working with. We also have settings, and then we also have help. If you click on help, for example, it will show you a panel opens up on the side, and then in the panel, line number 2 says versions of all program components. You got to click on it. And when you click on it, you will see a third panel that opens up on the side, and it shows you the version of all program components, beginning with the application version. So it says 1.0.060, and then the project version is 2.3.7. Both of these in combination makes up for the current revision code. So it will be 1.0.060. 2.3.7. As far as settings, this is not so important. You can leave it as is. You can, change some user details. For example, you can enter your workshop number, your username, the name of your company, and click apply. So that can be done. The three buttons that I mentioned before, select, diagnostics, and report. These are the three buttons that you will work with the most. Whenever you start up EasyScan application, before you proceed with any diagnostics, it's advised that you click on the button report, and then you first save any of the reports that may be in the system by clicking on the print button and saving the report. But our recommendation is we also use the save as button to save the report. So you'll have to save it both ways. When you use the print button, I clicked on print, it'll ask you to select a printer. And under printer, you will always find this Microsoft Print to PDF printer. So you can choose that. And then what you do is you click on the button print. And when you do that, it'll ask you for a file name. So here we can mention the file name. Recommendation is that you use the customer name, the truck number, the heater serial number, etc., as part of your file name. Also, you're able to choose which of these directories you would like to save it to. To click on the print button, and then it saves it as a PDF document. Using the Save As button saves this report in the XML format. It's basically a format under which signal data can be reviewed. Signal data is all the parameters that were measured during the testing or the diagnostic process. And when that file is reopened offline to review the exact same signal data, just as you would have seen it happen in real time when it was a live diagnostic test. These two files are important. They are required by our warranty department when you submit a claim. Now, the next step would be to delete it. So you hit the delete button. You will see a pop-up appear which says, do you want to really delete the file? You respond by clicking yes. And now the file gets deleted. As you can see, now all we have left on the screen is the blank report file with today's date and timestamp at the very top. So now that we have prepared a blank report, click on the select button. So we have, beginning from the top, we have the air heater third generation, followed by air heater second generation. And where it simply says air heater, it means the first generation air heater. Next comes the water heater or our coolant heaters, third generation, followed by simply where it says water heater. So all our second generation and first generation coolant heaters can be selected under this option where it says water heater. Control elements allows you to select the Easy Start Pro controller if your application has it. And then we have other options which we are not going to discuss today. Now, the tools option is where you're going to play back the file, and I will explain that later on. So right now, I'm connected to the Airtronic third generation heaters. Click on the triangle that is beside it. Usually it's gray. Move the cursor over it. You'll see it changes to blue. As soon as it changes to blue, I click on it, and then what I see is a drop-down menu appears. There's only one option, and it simply says diagnostics. So next, what I have to do is, say, just like I did before, I have to click on that small triangle, which is beside the option diagnostics. And when I click on it, now I can see the different heaters that I can select. Of these three that are listed, the one that you will always end up selecting would be the very first one on the list, and it simply says AX3. The A stands for Airtronic. The X stands for the heater size. We have 4 heater sizes under the Airtronic third generation. So we have the small, we have the medium, we have the large, and the extra large. Doesn't matter what the size of the heater is. This is the only selection for all of those. And the number 3 tells us that it is the third generation. Now, in the third generation, we also have 12 and 24 volt heaters. All of those are also selected with this single selection box that you see, this checkbox that you see. So in order to confirm our selection, all we have to do is click on the checkbox. And as soon as I do that, you will see a list of diagnostic functions appear below it. And by default, all of them will automatically be selected. So this is how you go about selecting your heater in order to proceed with diagnostics. Right now, we did this for the Airtronic third generation heater. Later on, when we switch gears, we will talk about the coolant heaters, and it'll be very similar to what you just saw happen here. All right, so I hope you get the idea how to select the device, whether it's a heater or a controller, or if it's the review option under tools. All of that can be selected in the main select menu panel. All right, once you're finished selecting the right heater like we did just now, now we can proceed to the next part, which is diagnostics. So I click on the button diagnostics. You'll have to give it a couple of seconds till the function is loaded. The diagnostic panel has opened up, and you can confirm the heater type, because at the very top you can see the heater that you had chosen in the select menu. So it's the AX3 third generation Airtronic heater. And then all of the functions that appeared below this under the select menu are now lined side by side on the top of the panel. So once you land on this view, what you have to do is click on the very last tab, which says report. So this is always the first thing that you should do. Click on the button report. And then what you do is you wait for a few more seconds till the data has been read. So you can see the progress being shown over here. So this will appear 100% when it is finished. And then over here, it'll also, the status message also will change. So now it says, click on the button to save, and it says 100% read completed. So it's very clear. This message says, click on the button to save. And this is referring to the button above. This is the save button. So just like the message says, we're going to click on the save button. This is a very important step. If you do not click on the save button, all the data that has been read will not be copied to the report. I hope this is very clear. So let's go ahead and click on the save button, and then it tries to log the data. It shows us the progress being made. And once it is 100% completed, the message status will say log data successful. So now all this extracted data has now been copied to the report. So if I want to confirm that, all I need to do is click on the button report in the main menu. And if you recall, we had a blank report before. So let's click on the button report. And now we can see we have a complete report, A to Z, of this heater. Okay. Now remember, this is all data that's been extracted even before we test ran the heater. All right. So this is data that is stored in the ECU memory. Now, if you have just simply this data and you would like to save it, which we will recommend you do, you will use just the print button, because then you are generating a PDF document. So when you are in this report page, you can use the print button because we haven't done any diagnostic test yet. All right. So hit the print button, choose Microsoft Print to PDF, click on the print button in the message box that appeared, type in the file name over here, hit the button save. This is how you'll create your PDF. So I hope this is clear. Now, once we have reviewed the report, we can switch back to diagnostic mode. So click on the button diagnostics. So we can see there are other functions that are listed. What is the next step that you want to do? The next step, what you want to do is you want to review the fault memory. So click on the button fault memory. And in fault memory, it will automatically read the fault memory and it will give us a summary view of the fault memories. So we can see we have two fault memories. One is active failures and the second one is stored failures. The count of fault codes stored in the active failure currently reads a 0. The count of fault codes stored under stored failures currently reads a 6. Both of these error memories have a maximum capacity to hold up to 10 fault codes. Of course, right now in this scenario that we are looking at, there are no codes in the active failure memory. But we do see there are 6 fault codes stored in the stored failure memory. So all we have to do is click on that stored failure memory, and in the next panel, we will see all of those 6 fault codes. Now you can see there is the code itself, and then there is a short description of the code. This will be very similar to what you may have seen in our older generation heaters. The descriptions are exactly the same. For our older generation heaters, we did not have such a long fault codes. We had just a 2-digit code, but now you can see this is following the automotive format. Another thing that has changed with the newer generation CAN bus heaters is that these codes also, there is additional data that is stored for each of these codes. So if for example, if I click on any one of these codes, I can see the additional data that pops up over here. And then if you want to go back to the previous panel where it shows all of the 6 codes, you simply click on the stored failure count value, and then all the 6 codes will appear. You could also use the refresh button. So this is how you can go about reviewing the codes. Now, we do have a button which says clear fault memory. The only time you will ever use this button, or it is recommended that you use this button, is when you have an active lockout of the ECU. So it'll say ECU lockout. And when that you have the code for an ECU lockout, then you will have to clear the fault memory. But before you clear the fault memory, remember what we just did earlier? You create a report. and then you save that report, because this report also has a complete list of all the fault codes that are stored in both active failure memory and stored failure memory. So let's go back to diagnostics. So that's all about fault memory. I hope this is clear. Now, we also have another function which is called as components. So that's what you're actually, before you go up to the component tab, let's review what's under operating data. If you click on the tab operating data, now you'll again wait for a few seconds. And remember, we are connected to the third generation Airtronic. So this is the operating data. It's shown in two columns. And in each of the columns, there's a lot of data that you can scroll from the top to the bottom to review all of it. Some of the data may be relevant, some of them may not make sense, but it is there anyways. Some of the key pieces of data that you will be focused upon would be the total operating time, which can be found under operating times. You'll also see the time for under which the heating power. So for different heating power ranges, so you can see from 0 to 25% of the power, how long did the unit operate, and so on. Unfortunately, the demo heater that I'm using does not have many hours or minutes logged, and that's the reason why you're seeing mostly all of them read 0. Okay. So this is how you can review the operating data by simply clicking on the tab operating data. Not only does it have the total operating time of the heater, which is important for warranty purposes because these heaters have a maximum warranty of 2,000 hours. 2,000 hours or 2 years in service, whichever comes first. All right. Unfortunately, the operating time is displayed in minutes, not hours. So you will have to do basic math to find out, how many minutes is 2,000 hours. And then based on that, you'll have to make sure that whatever is being shown on that particular heater is well within that maximum 2,000 hours. All right. So, and then you can also see there's other information like how many times the glow pin was activated, or if the heater, quit abruptly in between operations due to a loss of flame, it will basically document that information. And over here, you can also see the status of your ECU. If you do have a ECU locked out, this operation lock will appear as active. You will see the counter for the number of overheatings. You will see counters for the number of start attempts made by the heater. You will see the count of values for the number of successful starts made by the heater, and then also the failed start attempts. Excuse me. So you can see there's a lot of useful data in these two panels, but all of this data is also in the report that we just captured. All right, now that we are done with operating data, we can go into components. If we click on components, this is where you can test each component individually. So if you're working with the Airtronic heater, there are 3 components you can test individually. One is the fuel pump. It's referred to as the dosing pump here in the application. The second one is the glow pin, or referred to as the glow plug over here. And then the third is your burner motor, which is the blower motor. These 3 components can be tested independently without having to switch on the heater. If you would like to test all 3 at the same time and with one click, then you will use the self-test option. Rather than testing the components one at a time, or after you're done testing each component one at a time, if you would like to test run the whole heater, then you would use the heater on option. And then if you would like to test run the heater, but you would like to modify some of the parameters temporarily, then you would use the workshop heating option. So each of these functions are available and they're meant for a specific purpose. So for example, if I select the burner motor, Now over here, I can see the default speed and time for which this test of this burner motor will take place. You can always modify these parameters for testing. So by simply clicking on it, when the option box appears, here you can type in the modified test parameter. You'll see the range is mentioned over here, the actual value, the default value, and whatever you can set is mentioned. So for example, we are going to test run this blower motor at 3500, and you click OK, and you will see the modified value now appears. And you do the same for the time as well. You will set the time. Let's say in this case, I set it for 30 seconds, click OK, and the modified time now appears. Once I have confirmed the parameters under which this component needs to be tested, all I need to do is click on the Start button, and that component will be activated. It will run for the next 30 seconds. If it fails during the test, then the count for active failures will read 1. That's your first indication that, hey, we have a bad fan motor. But within 30 seconds or whatever time you have selected, if this test runs fine, just like as it's doing right now, that means there is nothing wrong with the fan assembly and the test was successful. And the status message over here at the top, it says very clearly, burner motor successful. So this is how you go about testing the components. So now if you want to get all the remaining functions back into the panel, all you have to do is click on this button that says refresh, and you will get all the functions. They will reappear in that panel so that you could now select the next one. Dosing pump, very similar. You'll select the dosing pump. This refers to the fuel pump, as I mentioned. You can set the frequency of the pump. So for example, I can set it to 7 Hertz. Click OK. I can set the time. Once again, I can choose how long the test should run. Here I'm choosing 20 seconds. And once I've confirmed the parameters for testing, all I have to do is click on the Start button, and my fuel pump should begin operating. This would be a good way to prime the fuel pump and the fuel lines. So for example, if you're doing a brand new installation, or you have dropped the unit for repairs, now you have fixed it, you're putting it back up, you're reconnecting the fuel lines, there is air in the lines, you want to prime it, this would be a good way to prime it. Once again, hit the button refresh, so you get all the selections back again in this panel under select functions. And as I mentioned, if you'd like to do all the 3 tests together, you simply choose the self-test option. And if you choose the heater on option, it's basically telling the heater to switch on. So I can click on it and hit the button start, and my heater will begin operating. All right. The workshop heating mode, this is only for advanced users. And just to give you a glimpse of what it means is, if you select workshop heating, over here, you can actually change some of these parameters. Whatever changes you make here is only applicable during the test. Once you come out of the test, your ECU stored parameters will apply. Okay, so these are just simply test parameters. So for example, if you want to change the nominal temperature, if you want to increase the nominal temperature, you can do so by clicking on that value and changing it from, let's say, 20 degrees to 30 degrees, for example. And now the new nominal temperature has been set to a higher value of 30 degrees. So now when I click on the button start, my heater will try to maintain a temperature of 30 degrees in the application. So this is all about component testing. It's very important that after you have reviewed the operating data and the fault memory, that you do a component test before you proceed further. The final part of the test would be measured values. So the way you would do that is you click on the tab measured values. Wait for the diagnostic function to open. And under measured values, you will see there are 3 columns of data. The first column is the prioritized data. The next column is the second prioritized data, and then the third column is basically additional data that may not be very relevant. Regardless, it's still being shown over here. Now, if you would like to increase the screen space occupied by this panel, right now we are not currently using the main menu. So this is a collapsible menu. All you have to do is click on this arrow button at the very top and the menu collapses. This way you get more screen space to see the measured value panels. As you can see, each of these panels have a slide bar that you can move up and down, or scroll bar, I should say. And this allows you to review all the information that is there, whether it's a flame sensor, temperature, whether it's the battery voltage, whether it's the speed of the fan, whether it's the frequency of the pump, whether it's the set point value that is set at the controller. All of this can be observed in real time. So once you clicked on measured values, you have to begin the test. And to begin the test, what you have to first do is click on the button Start Measurement. So I just clicked on it, and now the measurement is begun. So it's measuring all the data, current data. And then I can click on the next button, which says heater on. Think about this as like a toggle switch. It's switching the unit on. So there we go. I just switched it on. So now the heater will try to start up. The status is displayed in real time over here. You can see the speed went up to 900 RPM and it dropped to 0 RPM. Now it's back to 106. Now it's back to 600 RPM, going up to 900 and so on. So you can see the status of the unit. Operating conditions, it says pre-glow. Okay, so it's going to basically go through the act of warming up the glow pin. And then once the glow pin has sufficiently heated up, the fuel pump will start. Right now it's reading 0 hertz. So there we go. The fuel pump kicks in, which means at this point in time, fuel enters the unit. And then what do you expect to see happen? You expect to have the heater start up. And once it starts up and successfully ignites, then the glow pin will be switched off. So you will see the duty cycle, or the power supplied to the glow pin currently is reading about 100.40 watts. That will be back to 0. Why? Because the unit will have successfully started. So this is how you go about doing a measured values test. Now, when you do this test, always make sure you run this test for at least 15 minutes, the minimum 15 minutes. Now, while you're doing this test, if you'd like to see a graphical view of these values, you can simply click on the tab Diagram. And then in the diagram view, you can pick and choose which of these you want to see as a graph. So here I'm selecting a couple. There is a limit. The limit is maximum 8. You cannot go beyond that. And whatever value you select, the graph will appear from that point on. Okay. Now, you can see the graph up here. Now, if you would like to toggle back to the values screen, you simply click on measured values. So between measured values and diagram, you can monitor the operation of the heater in real time. After a minimum of 15 minutes or more, when you want to finally switch off or stop the test, the first thing you want to do is click on the heater off button. And then you want to click on the button Stop Measurement. So right now the measurement has stopped. So you can see this is all that you see over here in a graph format or under measured value. This is the data. This is the signal data. Now, if you want to capture all of this into your report file, you must click on this button that says Save Report. And I'm pointing to it right now. It's at the top. If you do not do this, all of this data will not be saved and it will be lost forever. So here we go. I click on the Save Report button. The log data status appears. You can always enter a final comment based on the observations made. Click OK after you're done that. And now the log data has been successfully copied to the report. So let's expand the main menu by clicking on the arrow button. Go back to our report page. And if you scroll down to the bottom, you will notice that there is an additional line that has been added. It says recorded signals. When you see this, it means there are signals. Now, you may ask, why is that we are not seeing the graph over here? The reason is your computer sometimes will tend not to show it. Thinks of it as a virus. So you can see it's giving us an alert message at the very top. So all you do is click here for options, click there, allow blocked content, yes. And now if you were to scroll down the report page, like I'm doing right now, towards the very end, you will see the graph. So now you have to go ahead and use the print option to save this entire information along with the graph as a PDF. But very important, you also have to click on the Save As button and then save this information as an XML file. The file name is automatically populated for you. You have the current date and time. But then you can qualify this file name with the name of the customer, for example, or the vehicle number, truck number, whatever you choose. Make it unique so that you can always retrieve the file and hit save. This is how you go about saving the file, because as I mentioned before, if you're submitting a warranty claim, these files are very much required. Also, if you're dealing with, let's say, a problem heater and you would like more assistance from our technical support group, or you would like to call us and get some assistance, this is the file that we will ask you for. Now what we're going to do is we're going back into EasyScan here. Click on the select button. I'm going to deselect the third generation Airtronic. All right. And then just for, just so that it's much more clearer, I'm just going to collapse it. Click on those arrow buttons to collapse it further. And now I'm going to shift my connection from the third generation Airtronic to the third generation hydronic heater. Hydronic heater is, as you know, a coolant heater. There's a lot of similarities. So selection is just like this. As I mentioned, you will choose the water heater third generation. Click on the option diagnostics. When I say click on the option diagnostics, you should not click on the word diagnostics. If I click on the word, you will see a document over here. Or if there is no document, I'll say there's no document. What you want to be doing is click on that arrow button. And now you will see the drop down. Now within this drop down, the most commonly used heater here in North America is the one that says HS3 Echo 12 volt CS. That's the most common. Okay, so that's the choice that you will often end up selecting. So remember that. And once you do that, go again back to diagnostics. So just like before, you will see the panel appear. It is loading up the diagnostics. Now you can see the format looks slightly different. So remember what we did the last time. The last time, what did we do when we began diagnostics? So when we clicked on diagnostics and after the diagnostic function was loaded, we created a workshop report. And that's exactly what we have to do. We want to create a workshop report. But before we create a new workshop report, we want to go to the previous report that's in the system. Make sure you have printed it. That means saved as a PDF document or printed, whatever, and also save as an XML file. Remember to do both of these and then click on the delete button to delete the file. Very important. Okay, now you can go back to diagnostics, click on the tab workshop report, and now when the workshop report appears, you have to click on this button, create workshop report. Remember, when we did the third generation Airtronic, this button was non-existent. It automatically read, whereas this third generation hydronic heater is slightly different. And so is the second generation Airtronic. So it can get a little bit confusing, but once you start using it, then it'll be okay. So here we go. We click on this button, create workshop report, and now it begins reading all the data. And then the other thing that it does is, as soon as it reads and extracts the data, it also copies it to the report. So if I click on the button report, I will see all that information over here. Okay. So I didn't have to click on the save button. All I had to do was click on the create workshop button. And now, of course, I can go back to report and then, just like we did before, print it to save this as a PDF document, and then click on diagnostics to come back to the main diagnostic panel. Once again, you can review the operating data by clicking on the tab operating data. So here we can see the layout. It's a little bit more better, I would say. It's all organized, much more structured, and you can see the overall operating time is listed. It reads 30 minutes on this heater. You can see all the different types of starts. For example, number of starts made by the heater. We have your utilization profile being recorded. We have all the different counter values. And then over here, we also have safety counters. So this hydronic S3 heater ECU can be locked out if it has multiple overheating events that exceed more than a count of 10. So that's the maximum threshold. Safety time refers to failure to start up. When the operator tries to switch on the heater, if it does not start after making 2 start attempts, then this counter value will start to read 1, 2, 3, and so on. And then when it reaches the threshold of 5, guess what happens? Your ECU locks out. Unlike the third generation heater where I said you'll have to delete the fault memory, in case of the second generation Airtronic and the third generation hydronic heaters, you have these 2 reset buttons. So let's say in the event you have these counter values, equal to the threshold or close to the threshold, you can always hit this reset button to reset it back to 0. All right. This is the safest way to do it without clearing the codes, because remember, when you clear the codes, you will lose all data. Okay. So this is all under operating data. Let's take a look at our fault memory. I click on the tab fault memory, and you will see the fault memory panel opens up. Here again, we have 2 sets of memories. One is the active failure memory, and the second one is the stored failure memory. By default, the active failure memory has been read already, and the count of the values of fault codes under active failure memory is shown. Right now, there are 0 failures, so we see a blank panel. But if you click on stored failures, for example, and then click on the button read, it will complete the read and it'll show the list of codes. Now here, sometimes you may get this visual C++ messages that pop up randomly. I would simply click on ignore, and then move on beyond that. Okay, that's part of the computer's issues. So you can just simply click ignore on that. And now you can see in the stored failure memory, we have 6 failure codes or fault codes shown. Once again, you have the code in the new format and the description. But just like the Airtronic heater, 3rd generation, if you click on the code, you will see in the side panel further information about the code itself. This is very valuable data. If you hit the clear fault memory, all of this information will be cleared. So at least for the hydronic heaters, make sure you do not clear the faults. Now, in case of the Airtronic 3rd generation, if you do have to clear the fault codes, as I mentioned, you first save it as a report so that all the codes are stored along with the report. Okay, so this is how we can review the fault memory. Next is components. Remember, we did component testing on the Airtronic 3rd generation. When it comes to the 3rd generation hydronic heater, the coolant heater, or the 2nd generation, you can click on components and you can do the component testing. So here we have the components function being loaded. You wait for a few seconds till it completes, and then you can see the overall panel for the component test. If you want to independently test run the components, you're going to choose this tab over here which says components internal or components external. So if components internal will show you the two components that are internal to the heater. So in the hydronic heater, we have the fan motor and the glow pin. If I click on external, I have the external components on the hydronic heater. We have the fuel pump, the dosing pump as it is referred to, and then the coolant pump. All right. So this is how you can go about switching between internal and external components. Once again, to test run the components, all you have to do is set the parameters. This is the range that's specified. So over here it says 2500 is the default. I'm going to change that to, let's say, 4000 RPM. Change the duration to, let's say, 30 seconds, for example. And then when I click on the button actuate for the burner motor, my blower fan, the heater blower fan should start. So right now it's operating. I don't know if my computer will pick up the sound and whether you'll be able to hear it or not. But you can see in the panel beside, it shows you the status, shows you the remaining time, and then the status, of the test itself. Once the test is done, if there are no failures to report, then it'll say component test okay. The active failure count currently reads 0, and if it remains as 0, it means there were no failures. So there we go. We successfully tested component number 1. And then we have the glow pin that can be tested in a very similar fashion. And for external components, we have the fuel pump and the coolant pump. Once again, if I were to test run the fuel pump, you can prime the fuel lines. For example, I'm setting it to 20 seconds at 7 Hertz. Click on the button actuate. My fuel pump is now activated, and you can see the test is currently running. And this would be a good way to prime the fuel lines, especially when you're installing a brand new unit, or when you have repaired a unit and you're putting it back into the vehicle. You can always prime the fuel lines. This will save you a lot of time, because if you don't prime the fuel lines, guess what's going to happen? Your heater is going to need multiple restart attempts, and that will take time. So this is how you go about doing a component test. Now, under the tab functions, which appeared, when you clicked on components, you can see it shows you, information like, for example, status of the fault memory, the condition of the heater. We also have a self-test button. So if I were to click on this button, all those components that we saw, the 4 components, will be tested in one go with a single click of the button. If you would like to test run the heater, you would use the heater on button. And if you want to see the information as a graph, all you have to do is click on the measured values button here. When you click on the measured values button, it'll show you the information as a graph, some of the critical information like inlet sensor values, outlet sensor values, heat output, power applied to the glow pin, the speed of the fan, and the frequency of the pump. If you want to switch back to the previous view, click on the start stop heater button. So this way you can toggle on and off the graph view. Under workshop heating, just like we did on the 3rd generation Airtronic, you can change, for example, the nominal temperature values. So you can see in the 3rd generation hydronic heater and the Airtronic heater, you're able to get the temperatures in degree Fahrenheit. Unfortunately, this was not the case for the 3rd generation Airtronic heater, as you saw previously. It was only in Celsius. So that is a bug that will be corrected, and whenever it's corrected, then hopefully that time we'll be able to see that as Fahrenheit as well. So this is all under components, and once you do the component test, then you can proceed with measured values. This is the final test always. Again, when you do a measured values test, you must make sure that you test run the heater at least 15 minutes or more. Okay, so we wait for the measured value panel to start. It'll give you some pop-up messages like read data to report file. I'm going to click no here. If you click yes, it'll recreate the report file for you. And now the very important step that you should never forget is click on the button all. This is very important. So click on the button all, and then you will see the data listed. This is basically in values, measured, all the values of the parameters are listed. And if you want to see this information as a graph, you can click on the tab diagram. And just like we did with the third generation, you can pick and choose which of these values you would like to see as a diagram. Once again, there is a limit. The limit is set to 6 this time. It's not 8, it's 6. So you can toggle between measured values and diagram. Now, of course, you're not seeing any diagram at the moment because we haven't started the measurement. So once you make all these pre-selections, you can now start the measurement. And then, just like we did before, you can also start the heater. When you start the heater, this pop-up will appear where it says auxiliary heating, and that's selected by default, and that's what we need to select. So you simply click on the OK button, and now the heater begins to operate, and you can see the graphed out information on the panel here. As you can see, the graph is appearing very, in a very tight space, and we would like to expand this space, and there's ways to do that. To do that, we can collapse the main menu. Remember, we did that before. And how do we do it? We simply click on this arrow button. Now you can also see we have this panel that says choose the function. We have already chosen all the functions, so there's no use for this panel at the moment. We can collapse the choose function panel by clicking on this button, the arrow button above it. And so now we have a much larger space to visually see the actual parameters and the graph in real time as it's displayed when the heater test is up running. So this is how you go about doing what's called as a measured values test. A measured value test is a full functional test of the heater. Okay. At the end of the test, what you got to do is you stop the heater by clicking on the heater off button. Then you will click on the stop measurement button. Once the stop measurement button has been pressed, it'll say it's preparing the signals just like before. It'll ask you to enter final comments. Click OK. Now, once this has been stored 100%, here's the next very important step. If you do not do this, all of these parameters will not be captured. You have to go to the next level panel, or the tab where it says measured values, diagram. The third tab says recorded signals. Click on that recorded signals tab, and then click on the button log measured values. It'll say do not switch to any other view. Wait for the signals to be stored. Once it's 100%, you can click OK. And now if I expand the main menu, click on report, I should be able to see not only the data that we had captured from the ECU, but towards the end, we should also see the graph. Once again, we have to use the print button to save this as a PDF document. And you have to use the save as button so that all that signals, all the parameter values can also be saved as well. So if I hit save as, once again, it gives us the name of the file by default. Use your customer name, truck number, and then save the file. So this is how you're going to use your EasyScan Diagnostics. Thank you for attending the class today.